Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this fantastic venue for this HEAS annual keynote lecture. My name is Tom Higham, and I'm a professor here at the University of Vienna, and I am the current head of HEAS. HEAS, for those of you that don't know, stands for Human Evolution and Archaeological Sciences. It's this fantastic Forschungsverbund that we've had running here at the University of Vienna for the last 2 years. Over 2 years now, 2 years, almost 3 years, led ably previously by Professor Gerhard Weber, and now I'm privileged to take on that job. We're also fantastically lucky to have in our Forschungsverbund not just the University of Vienna, but also this amazing Austrian Academy of Sciences, as well as the Natural History Museum of Vienna. What do we actually do? Well, we do a lot of things here at HEAS. We are interested in developing and leading world research in human evolution and archaeological sciences. We want to create a strong foundation for projects, research, pilot studies, and a range of close collaborations within our network and beyond externally to provide support for a range of applications for things like research grants and third-party funds. We want to develop and strengthen international research partnerships, knowledge transfer, and a range of different collaborations, develop expertise and research within the network as well, and also engage with the public to get across the fantastic and exciting research that's going on here in Vienna in this amazing field of human evolution and archaeological sciences. And part of that work is to do things like this, to create these fantastic events where we bring everybody together with a world-leading researcher coming to Vienna to interact with people here, to talk about science and research and collaboration, and to share the knowledge that they have generated in their fantastic career. This year, hopefully, many of you will know that we have had a huge range of seminar series. We have 3 fantastic seminar series we run each year. We've had 27 fantastic talks within those seminar series, which have been seen and attended by 1,500 plus people from 60 different countries. Because we have hybrid events, we connect with people all around the world. And this is growing year on year in a really exciting way, such that we feel that things have been going extremely well. And there's a real focus here in Vienna through HEAS on these exciting areas of research and interest. For those of you that don't know, we have a newsletter that you can sign up to on our website at heas.at. We have a fantastic podcast series where we interview some of the important scientists who come to visit and ask them lots of interesting questions that in a sort of informal manner can let us understand more about how they do their research and what they've learned from their careers. And we also have a fantastic YouTube channel which produces and archives all of the talks, such as the one tonight, from these visiting researchers. Tonight, we're going to have a fantastic lecture. I'm not going to introduce Professor Bánffy. I'm going to hand over to Barbara Horejs to do that. But I would just like to say welcome to everybody online. You really mean a lot to us. And if you have any questions, there'll be a Q&A at the end. And you're most welcome to send us some questions to ask, and we'll read them out at the end so that you can ask the speaker anything that you want to, or clarify something and ask a question. But now it gives me great pleasure to hand over to Professor Barbara Horejs, who of course is the director of the Austrian Archaeological Institute here at the Academy. Thank you very much and welcome to everybody.
Oh, thank you very much, Tom. Well, let me also warmly welcome you at this very hot afternoon in the Austrian Academy of Sciences. And as what Tom already mentioned, the Austrian Academy of Sciences, and in particular the Austrian Archaeological Institute, is a substantial partner in the HEAS network. I think it is now the right time to have the keynote lecture in our building, in this wonderful Theatersaal, and also the afterwards following HEAS summer party, which was not mentioned yet, but I should mention it now. There will be, I think so, a fantastic summer party afterwards in the Arkadenhof of the Academy, so outside of the building, and then to the left, you're there. Please, you're all very welcome to join the party. I hope I'm right, Meave. Issues, yes. All right. So, however, what Tom mentioned, I think is very important in his brief description of HEAS is we are all convinced of these collaborative efforts to bring together the different disciplines and different departments and faculties of the university together with the Austrian Academy of Sciences and the Natural History Museum to do research, joint research on the human past. And well, I think this is so far a story of success, and we are very glad as OeAI to participate here, I hope substantially. And there is no better keynote speaker than Eszter Bánffy, who dedicated her research life to substantial fundamental questions on the human past in this interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary approach. Well, Eszter, she is very famous, so I don't want to repeat all the details of her CV now, but let me at least say a few, I would say, main characteristics of her life as a researcher in archaeology. Actually, she was born and studied and also worked in Hungary before 1989. So she has also a background from the other part of the so-called Iron Curtain, which is important to understand all her future efforts and afterwards following efforts in bringing together East and West in Europe and the world. And bringing together different cultural perspectives and social backgrounds of researchers. So this is one important aspect of her research, I think. The second important aspect is her constant support of young scientists, and especially and in particular female researchers in our field. And she is and was a mentor of many already other female famous scientists in European archaeology, and is still very engaged in this. Well, she did a lot of fieldwork projects and research in Hungary, but also in other European countries, mostly focusing on the Neolithic, but not only. There is also a lot of work on Chalcolithic and Bronze Age and later periods. However, she had her first positions in Hungary in archaeology. Before then, she moved on with several fellowships to different parts in the world, and ended up as director of the Römisch-Germanische Kommission of the DAI in Frankfurt, and is also a research professor for archaeology and prehistory at the Institute for Archaeology of the former Academy of Sciences in Hungary. So I will not go into any further details with this somehow difficult story. She published so far 9 monographs of 200 plus peer-reviewed articles and book chapters. Let me mention the first farmers of the Carpathian basin that many of you in the audience know very, very well. And I've heard some rumors, maybe there will be some updated chapters in some other books coming out perhaps soon. However, she is also in her function as the president of the European Association of Archaeology, very active in bringing together different cultures and still trying to overcome all kind of diplomatic conflicts we are facing all the time in international archaeology. But today, she is with us as an archaeologist with a fantastic expertise on the Neolithic in Europe and beyond. And in this role, I warmly welcome Eszter Bánffy here, and the stage is yours. Welcome, Eszter.
Well, thank you so much, Tom and Barbara, for these lovely introductions. And hello, everyone, in this hot afternoon, as you say. Today, I'm going to bring you back to the 6th millennium BC for a while. If it works, yes. And this is the period in that part of the Europe, Balkan Carpathian basin, Central Europe, the turn to food-producing and sedentary life. This is one of the few, actually 3 major transformations that shaped human history. Long archaeological debate on the process of Neolithization across Europe has been resolved broadly in favor of significant migrations virtually everywhere. And in the long run, the historical process of change brought by Neolithic migrants was irreversible in the end. However, the emergent big picture can and should be still examined further. There were 2 major routes setting out from Anatolia, as you can see on the map, one across the Mediterranean, the blue line, and one along the Aegean, the Balkans, towards Central Europe. Stages along this latter route consisted of liminal zones that later became new core areas. It becomes apparent that there were no simple waves of advance. Based on a combination of archaeological, bioarchaeological, and environmental data, I shall focus on 3 questions today. One is about the research and the many phases of the Neolithic transition. I'm trying to give you a brief introduction of its history and of our complex methods used for the investigation. The next point is the Southwest Carpathian Basin, because it was the last venue with live migrants and the zone for the Central European Neolithic transition, the decline of an orbit centered and based by clay. This was a crisis that needed a creative solution. And last but not least, I'm going to speak about the solution, the birth of the Central European Bandkeramik, linear Bandkeramik, LBK in short. I'll focus on some bottlenecks, some surviving, some undergoing changes, and some disappearing elements. You mentioned the Iron Curtain, Barbara. The Neolithic transition was a field where archaeology has been bound with actually everywhere, especially in the eastern half of Europe, because behind this already mentioned Iron Curtain, the revolutionary nature of the Neolithic was obligatory to believe in. This view, also using by the Marxist ideas by Vere, Gordon Childe, of course, it was underpinned by these theses, was meant to be similarly to the 20th century socialist type of development, evolving from the less developed towards the more developed. And it was about the control over natural forces of nature, in short, conquering nature. It is sufficient to think about the Siberian rivers turned backwards or the fate of Lake Aral to see where this kind of concept was leading to. However, the visions of the endless crop fields shown on the slide here, like those of a Soviet kolkhoz, it was obligatory belief in, as I said, farming proved to be rather small, carried out in small patches along creeks, stream lines, banks, or rivers. Nevertheless, the idea of the Neolithic revolution is still shown in a quite a communistic way, for instance, in a Catalonian exhibition book just a few years ago, 2018. First, about the Balkan route that led to the Southern Carpathian Basin. As Barbara very kindly already mentioned, I'm trying to put together a combination of old and new methods. Foragers and first farmers preferred quite different landscapes. 4 principal zones, as you can see on the big map, with Mesolithic sites in southeastern Europe, were mainly settled in karstic regions with an abundant amount of caves where they were hiding and where there were no later taphonomic disturbance. Western and central Serbia, on the contrary, in the alluvial riverine region, was an important region for the first farmers. It is, however, interesting to see if the twofold groups had overlaps and continuity in their diet and life way, and in the beginning, as shown by stable isotope results. Unlike the landscape most suitable for hunter-gatherer lifeways, the lowland offered different subsistence modes. Yet, no sudden and profound change can be observed here. For instance, there is a site named Kula, lies in the lowland. Diachronic changes were investigated in food resource exploitation by comparing the assemblages from Kula to those from settlements in the vicinity established during the early Neolithic. It turned out that this landscape, although it is more suitable for instance, animal husbandry, Kula continued to be in this landscape in use as a fishing spot, mostly likely due to its long-term importance and the possibilities offered. Oral microbiomes are unchanged. They stay unchanged until the very end of the Neolithic, beginning of the Chalcolithic, so 1,000 years later, which is an interesting thing hinting on the ongoing subsistence and dietary issues. And the same is shown by archaeobotanicists because very similar or the same set of plant taxa were continued to be in use in the late Mesolithic, in the transition period, and also in the earlier Neolithic, sorry. In the Central Balkans, the next small insight is a genuine migrant farmer settlement along the river Morava. In the extended classical and late Starchevo site of Svinjarička Čuka, the remains of buildings with upright walls were found. It is rich in pottery, lithics, and other finds, and yet it cannot be stated that its people were fully sedentary, unless, Barbara, you contradict me. I'm very keen on hearing the stunning new results, of which some of this you showed me this morning already. While all kinds of cereals and domesticated animals were attested here, larger amounts of wild-gathered plants and bones of hunted game were also present. The recent scrutiny of comparative and multidisciplinary analyses should shed light on stages of the process of becoming sedentary in the late phase, definitely at 5,600 Col BC, but possibly the process is even longer and goes back in time. So the Neolithic project is revealing stunning new results, and we are all keen to hear good news or any news about the project very soon in the near future. Approaching the Carpathian basin, we already expect a full wave of intruding early farmers and introducing the full Neolithic. Nevertheless, Kërësh sites in the Romanian Banat, like Bukova Pusto, shows a different picture. Rather, adaptive nutrition strategies to the riverine environment were ruling. An overwhelmingly Mesolithic diet was to be tracked. A skeleton of a child was, for instance, on a full Mesolithic diet, and the date is late again, 5,600 BC, so late Kërësh, almost the end. The excavator Rajko Kraus posed the question first, if these Kërësh farmers were adapting to local circumstances, or vice versa, adaptive hunter-gatherers started with some domesticates, but basically kept their old traditions. Now, we know the answer to this question. It is a full Kërësh site with all its materiality. And on top of it, it's a brand new result. It just gained a few months ago that the small child, who proved to be a 7-year-old girl, had a full Anatolian farmer's ancestry. We can say quoderat demonstrandum. It is best, perhaps, to cite Douglas Price on the Danube gorges, but this is, I think, valid for the whole of the Northern Balkans. There is an increasing body of evidence to argue that the last hunters were more sedentary and the first farmers in prehistoric Europe were more mobile than has generally been acknowledged. Data, including archaeological remains, strontium isotope analysis of human tooth enamel and seasonality studies of fauna document more sedentary hunters and more mobile farmers. And we can add a result from Dusan Boric and Emanuela Cristiani from a few years ago. They speak about a random amalgam between local and newcomer groups, along with ancient and new traditions also mingling. The paleoclimatic background in the 7th millennium BC central Serbia is not quite yet clear and doesn't enable us to draw conclusions on the possibility or on the lack of Mesolithic occupation and settlements therein. Western central Serbia seems to be, anyway, a contact zone, while there are many unknown factors of contacts, adaptation, and also a possible mixture. Yet some encounters, probably also more intensive interaction, is highly presumable. In the edge of the Carpathian basin, there is this lake Ludas. Could this Ludas lake shores in northern Serbia, close to the Hungarian border, be such a possible venue? Here, a series of Mesolithic and early Neolithic, that is Körös, settlement remains unknown. But so far, we don't know anything about their relationship, a possible continuity, or let alone an overlap in time. Nosza Gyöngypart, Biserna Obala, Ludas Budjak are Körös settlements, but with a high proportion of wild animal taxa among the bones, among the zooarchaeological remains that show transitions, and probably a long way to the transitions, but there are far more details, of course, to be detected in the near future. One is for sure, the water of the Ludas Lake fills one of the paleo channels that were active watercourses during the Pleistocene, binding the Tisa River catchment with the Danube Valley. These channels, geologically seen as earlier Danube riverbeds, were green corridors, were communication routes that helped the spread. We are following two basic components now, local foragers and migrants from the Northern Balkans, towards a new community that stemmed from these two, the rise of the first farmers into Western Central Europe, the LBK. Meanwhile, as I mentioned, this is a marginal zone, and from this liminal zone, there is something emerging that proved to be a new core area in the western part of the Carpathian Basin. If anyone asked me whether it was a simple scenario, I would say no. The Central European Balkan Agroecological Barrier, this is a long name, that also goes with tectonic differences below, is a very important discovery. However, the word barrier is not fitting. It's not very fortunate because aside of dividing the two, the Mediterranean and the more Atlantic zones within the Carpathian Basin, it speaks about division, it speaks about cuts or fences. Although this barrier was rather a contact zone, a longer-term permeable frontier, and we will see quite a few signs of it. In the early 6th millennium BC, here the blue regions you see were more determined by late hunter-gatherers, participants, while the red ones speak for more active newcomers, Körös people on the eastern side and Starchevo on the west. This speaks not of a simple wave of advance, and if we want to zoom in, the picture gets more and more complicated. It has some territorial overlap in the central and northern areas, which, however, does not necessarily mean a full synchrony in time. So we don't know whether they saw each other. This is one research question we want to clear in the near future, a couple of years, hopefully. Here you can see the map of the initial Neolithic that shows why the Carpathian Basin and its southwestern part is so important. That's just a warning for anyone thinking that I'm speaking about the Carpathian Basin because I'm Hungarian. No, the newcomers distribution area is marked in red, which splits in two main branches, the Körös Kris in the east develops locally, and in the west in Transdanubia, the periphery of the Starchevo culture marked in yellow, this liminal zone, plays a crucial role in the formation of the LBK, the first farmers in Central Europe. And this map shows the situation in the mid-6th millennium in Transdanubia, after the formation period of the LBK, that was soon distributed to the northwest, marked in red. As we know, it occupied vast areas within Europe, from the Paris Basin to Krakow region and even to Ukraine. Archaeologically seen, its formation, the Starchevo input in this procedure is rather clear. But the presence of the local groups proved to be an open question for a long time. In the beginning, I talked about new methods. So before going into the details of these components, let me say a few words about this combination of methods there. In the Römisch-Germanisch Commission, during my 10 years working there, we developed a competence center for non- and minimal invasive methods. The left part shows drones combined with LiDAR scanning, geophysical surveys, and the traditional field walking. This is the absolutely non-invasive part of it. While drillings with susceptibility measurements for the vertical composition and for the various scientific analyses of the samples belong to minimal invasive methods. All this is carried out before excavations or completing excavated surfaces or instead of excavations. The results from these analyses are compared with the traditional archaeological data that we bitterly need. We will not miss them. With a precise absolute dating with Bayesian modeling and molecular biological analyses. Non-invasive workflow is now extended with two relatively new methods. It's a cooperation with the German Aerospace Center in order to compare very detailed satellite images with geomagnetic prospections carried out by us archaeologists, so that we learn what to see in regions on satellite images where there are no geophysical fieldwork. The origin of this cooperation was very easy. We found a chap who was deeply interested in archaeology there, and he was very easy to be persuaded to let their satellites 50 times the same each day over sites of the coordinates he was given. And so we have this comparison. This is a very valuable thing for us. A second pilot work now distributing, but a few years ago when we started, it was really a pioneer work. It was tracing the autosomal DNA of soil bacteria from both inside the sites and from off-site areas, gained by coring, as I said. This is a cooperation with the Leipzig Max Planck Institute. Many human and animal-specific bacteria, including pathogens, which is quite an important new field, will yield information about impact on the landscape. Environmental DNA research is becoming increasingly important in the Neolithic transition. New proposals are focusing on environmental samples and their evaluation. Now, shortly about the bioarchaeological evidence. A major DNA project took place researching genetic ancestry, health, diet, mobility, the archaeogenetic, paleopathological, and stable isotope analysis in the Carpathian basin. During this project, more than 700 Neolithic skeletons, including so far the highest number of Starchevo skeletons, early Neolithic skeletons, were sampled. So practically every piece or sample with a good collagen, while the results are partly published and partly still being interpreted. Most recently, since that time, we worked with mitochondrial DNA. We cross-checked it with autosomal DNA investigations, and luckily, it looks like these results are confirming the old mitochondrial DNA results. The essence of it is that both mitochondrial and autosomal DNA show the robust migration with a minimal Mesolithic ancestry, But this latter ancestry increases to some extent after a few generations of living together and increasingly being in contact and exchange. So what you see here in the graph is the robust differences between the hunter-gatherer compilation of ancestry, genetic ancestry, and the newcomers, the first farmers. Nevertheless, you can trace some U8, U5 haplogroups, especially when some incoming smaller groups of people reach the Carpathian basin, just as the Vinca or the Sopot hiding in the mountains in Serbia, maybe with some forager reminiscences. And then in the late Neolithic, for us late Neolithic, I know for Austrians it's middle Neolithic, Lendia culture, you get a kind of mixture. Concentrating on the hunter-gatherer ancestry, it reaches, by the end of the Neolithic, it reaches the 12, 14, sometimes 15% U haplogroup percentage, which, if we consider the low demographic number of people, hunter-gatherers, this is quite a robust number, I think. Another graph shows the frequency of mitochondrial DNA haplogroups on LBK sites. You can see that in the northern regions, the forager ancestry was present from the earliest Neolithic phases, the birth of the LBK, while in the southern regions, in the starchable regions, it was barely present at the beginning. But it seems that genetic admixture increased both in spatial and temporal terms in the genetic composition of the first farmers while they were spreading along the Danube basin and then northwards and eastwards. I'm inserting one DNA paper results here because it really fits here to Vienna. It reflects admixture between Anatolian farmers and Western hunter-gatherers. In the case of the formative LBK, it is the site of Brunn am Gebirge near Vienna, quite close to here. 3 individuals analyzed at the formative LBK Brunn 2 site show that 2 of them had a mixture of Western hunter-gatherer related and Anatolian farmer related ancestry, one with approximately 50% of each, while the 3rd individual had approximately an Anatolian farmer-related ancestry. Notably, the 50% person, due to their strontium stable isotope analysis, was born somewhere else, so it was migrated to Brunn. These facts on interbreeding highlight the integrative nature and composition of the LBK, the early LBK communities. Ancient DNA analysis suggests primarily demic expansion. However, the presence of this mentioned 10–15% hunter-gatherer ancestry in modern Europeans indicates cultural transmission and mating were additional contributing factors. New attempts integrate mathematical models, agent-based simulations, and ancient DNA analysis to dissect and quantify the roles of cultural diffusion and assortative mating in farming's expansion. It will soon unfold whether or how this approach offers new insights into early agricultural societies through the integration of ancient DNA with, compared with archaeological models. So, what does this all mean for the current archaeological record? Being the last venue with real Southeast European live migrant farmers, Transdanubia has been investigated quite thoroughly in the past 2 decades. Research concentrated on 2 crucial areas in Western Transdanubia and then in the southeastern edges of Transdanubia. First, there were 3 major research projects in the western part. The outcomes shed light on the transitional period with local hunter-gatherers, newcomers, and the new formation, the Bandkeramik. The Sárköz project in the southeast involved the megasite Alsónyék, started with an intensive first farmer site, a starchable site. We are still in the publishing phase. Many sites excavated within development-led projects from the nearby are involved in this investigation in order to get a good comparison. About the establishment of the LBK, another project started in 2016 by my former student, Christian Orosz, focusing on repeated southern impacts arriving from the Balkans and on the restructuring on later LBK communities. On the current state of research, component 1 in the formation of the LBK is the hunter-gatherers. Whether or not they're existing, some traces show that they were there, but for a long time, this was a legend only. Contrast to these earlier views that were about a depopulated Mesolithic in the entire Carpathian basin before the onset of the Neolithic, the first farmers coming in. Due to some recent intensive research projects, some very intensively settled niches could be found. Now I'm concentrating on Transdanubia. This is in southeastern Transdanubia, where there is a site, Regői, is the only excavated settlement among them. Where, as you can see, a round hut was found along with a large range of finds. Many more are around as lithic scatters, mingled with starchable remains. So as you can imagine, this is an intriguing situation for us. So we target to research that quite intensively in the future. Component 2 in formation of the LBK is the migrants, this last transformation from the Balkans. The north end of the Southeast European migrant wave is consisted of the Körös and starchable and the Körös, Kris and the starchable cultures. In eastern Hungary, you can see now the east, the Körös spread towards probably to get access to the obsidian and other lithic resources like limno-quartzite by this dynamic in the 6th millennium BC. We have new results showing that they were attracted by this obsidian and they lost their interest in the Balkan flint, actually. They wanted obsidian. And a similar model could be tested by formal modeling on further starchable sites of Western Hungary. But the spread is here somewhat belated as the farmers slow down in the forested hills of southern Transdanubia until they finally halt at the Balaton region. The consequence is a crisis situation for the starchable people at the northern frontier. Due to the fact that the starchable farmers reached a liminal zone between the riverine flooded lands and the forested at more Atlantic, hilly, cool hills, the reason why the groups left the ambient with a successful subsistence strategy is one of the open questions. We don't know what they had in mind, unless they also wanted dolitic sources, but we are not sure. With their knowledge, with their clay constructions, sheep and goats, they could not thrive in the cool and wet mountains. Their settlements became smaller and their pottery became very scarce and of lower quality. The excavated part of the starchable settlement at Alsónyék had over 400 archaeological features. It is the last extended and intensive settlement with graves on the genuine Balkan style at the southeastern edge, at the bottleneck region, where the migrant farmers probably arrived from. Countless ceramic finds, figurines, and increasing cattle husbandry with fewer sheep and goat have been found. But a bit northwards, in the peripheries, still south of Lake Balaton, we find no more than a few refuse pits consisting of a starchable settlement with a handful of coarse potsherds and nothing else. It must have been a misery for them. These are the details of the starchable part of the project, the times of their lives, the total, speaking for the earlier phase in the 59th century called BC, while the latest dates overlap with the formative LBK near the Lake Balaton. So if it is interesting for us where it begins, we can say that it began in the 59th century in Alsónyék, but we have some new dates of crossing the Drava River already on the northern part that starts with 6,000. So it goes on and on until the overlap situation with the formative LBK in Western Transdanubia and the Balaton region. The network checked by the Balaton upland radiolorite sheds light on Mesolithic contacts already, it is to be detected before the onset of the 6th millennium by hunter-gatherers. This network is continuous, which is one of the evidence cases from the time of the formative LBK between newcomer farmers and local foragers. A new formation, stemmed from components 1 and 2, is the birth of the LBK. This was the creative solution they somehow found out in this crisis situation. And it happened in the Balaton region, the Western Carpathian basin, probably also in the pre-Alpine region, but this is not yet very well researched. So I'm speaking about what we really know and leave the future research the rest. What we can see here that this formation, the birth of a new subsistence, new lifestyle, was an enormously, or proved to be an enormously successful response to the critical circumstances in the Southeast European lifeways. I'm using now the consciously an old map to show that nobody expected to find the missing link between the Starchevo and the hunter-gatherers outside the estimated LBK distribution area. The site Szentgyörgyvölgy Pityerdom lies on a hillside surrounded by woods, and this site was the first in the row to find the formative LBK face in the Balaton region. Earlier, there was absolutely no data of how the Starchevo turned to be LBK. Now we have some proof in our hands. 3 different phenomena determine the formative LBK: an almost genuine Starchevo pottery. But before anyone says that this was Starchevo pottery, I hasten to say that among the more than 14,000 pottery fragments, almost 1%, so almost 1,000 fragments already carried inside LBK, genuine LBK decoration. I was talking about the Szentgál radiolite in the red radiolite in the Balaton upland. That is 200 kilometers distance from Pityerdom, and 99% of the lithic material comes from the Balaton upland still. It's an extremely wide range of types within the flint assemblages. And I'm not a lithic expert, I'm sorry for that, but those who are, they state that there are strong reminiscences in the late Mesolithic types of tools. That speaks for a late Mesolithic subsistence anyway. And finally, the hamlet consisted 2 perfectly furbished, genuine klein bows, early phases of LBK longhouses with flanking long pits. The only difference between the normal early LBK houses is that these were heavily burned. In a region that is excellent for fishing, hunting, and foraging, they possessed all the domestic animals and all kinds of knowledge for a sedentary life. Yet, they were probably not fully sedentary. It costs another 4 or 5 generations, about 100, 120 years of undetermination or hesitation about choosing between food-producing or foraging subsistence strategies in this liminal area before they found the loess soils and they detected that the early LBK could fully rely on agriculture. And this happened in the famous date, 5350, which is the date of the beginning of the vast and very rapid expansion towards the west. Today, we know a series of real Mesolithic habitats, so to say, in central and western Transdanubia. If you see these satellite maps, you can detect that today these yellow points, which are formative LBK sites, might lie way far away from the Balaton region, but that time with a higher water level, they were lakeshore sites. So they identified formative LBK sites on this map show that they at least partly had a kind of hunter-gatherer way of life with, of course, all domesticates known. This is a current overview of the 6th and the earliest 5th millennia BC chronology of Western Hungary, with the intervals rounded by 25 years, and dark and light colors together representing 95% probability intervals, while the 68% probability intervals are represented by dark colors. This was done by Christian Orosz and our team. We can see the overlap of late Starchevo and formative LBK phases. So that's no joke. Chronologically, it is proven that they overlapped. I wish we had data that are more precise from the Starchevo sites other than Alsónyék to fine-tune this picture. There are individual dates today, but we hope for a new project to improve this current situation with Starchevo dates. And I have to say that an even greater wish is to gain some Mesolithic data, but for that we'd need skeletons, I'm afraid. Last point, some bottlenecks. 3 of them will follow. The first one is the change of architecture. And it might sound baffling, especially in a German-speaking area, that I will state the formation of the LBK Longhouse was already present in a late Starchevo orbit. It was a traditional view until 1990, the beginning of the large surface preventive excavations in the Carpathian basin, that the LBK Longhouse was born in Western Central Europe, so it was a very German thing, is considered to be, while pit houses determined the architecture of the Northern Balkans and also Transdanubia. Now, we have more than 1,000 LBK Longhouses, and we have the surface knowledge through surveys of way more than that. What is more, we note that the formative phase at Pityardom used already fully armed, fully developed forms of LBK Longhouses. The large site and architecture have become one of the focal points of our research of Starchevo. At Alsónyék, no dwelling house structures remain, but we have some rows of post holes and long pits, all oriented towards north and south. And we have burnt daub from houses. I did a spatial analysis of the daub depositions in the pits, cross-checking with the precise radiocarbon data in order to reconstruct some of the construction history of this early farming sites. And I have to say that similar structures in northern Croatia and in Serbia are apparent, but nobody interpreted them earlier like this. When I said we have daub, I should have said we have really a large amount of them, more than 2,000 kilograms of burnt rests of house walls and roof structures with imprints. Prior to this research, I said that if we have a couple of 100 kilograms, then nobody should tell me about pit houses, but this 2,000 and some kilograms is really convincing. We made structure from motion pictures of the diagnostic pieces for the sake of a possible house architecture reconstruction. The imprints of upright walls, timber junctions hint on gable-roofed houses. The tracks we already have allow a working hypothesis that the famous LBK Longhouse may have not been invented by the LBK, but by late Starchevo population groups living in the northern margins. The work is, of course, in progress, but we have numerous hints to have a reason to think this. Besides the 2 tons of daub, the fully developed longhouse appearing in the formative phase speak for this. And there is one phenomenon who speaks for this working hypothesis. A few years ago, so-called LBK settlements were found that you can see from the shape of the excavation that it was a motorway track. A preventive archaeological project, whereas we found it lies really at the bottleneck area at the southeastern edge of Transdanubia. So these sites contained LBK longhouses. However, precisely in the earliest phases, these houses contained pure and genuine but locally made vincha material. In other words, the builders and inhabitants of the LBK longhouses were early vincha people. How would this phenomenon, taken together with the fully developed formative LBK longhouses in Pityardom, be thinkable without the common architectural tradition of the late Starchevo, from they both stem from? The Starchevo is the common ancestor of both LBK and vincha. So the next bottleneck is shortly about the changing and eventually undergoing figural art. As many of us know, the clayscapes, a word mainly built on clay, using clay as a building material and for a vast amount of pottery, also have a wealth of clay representations. Clay was a major material for objects of cult and ritual, depicting both humans and animals. And this fades away by the end of the formative, or beginning with the end of the Starchevo and the formative LBK. Thousands in the Kura-Starchevo orbit and only 267 in the entire LBK in Europe occur. It's a date from a couple of years ago, so they might grow with a few, but not more than a handful. And very interestingly, the majority of these LBK, very few LBK finds occurs concentrated in the early phases and in the south of the LBK area, so closer to their origins. That speaks for fading away. And last but not least, a real subsistence crisis with sheep and goat with Caprine and the turn to cattle husbandry, which becomes then overwhelmingly. And of course, about implications of the diet and also implications in the ritual. The shift from Caprine to Bos-Taurus, that is cattle, is observed by zooarchaeologists. The graphs show the results from Alsónyék, and you can see the extreme percentages already there for cattle, up to 60 or 65% during the Starchevo phase. The main reason for the shift in cattle is greater capability to cope with harsh and wet winters. You can imagine why that sheep and goats have short legs and would get perhaps pneumonia in snow. Cattle have long legs and they survive as they find food even under snow. Several examples from other early farming sites show the same. In a critical situation, cattle seems a creative and successful solution. The zone, I have already shown this famous Sebaev, which is with this curious barrier name. The zone that spread along the Carpathian basin from the southwest to the northeast, the boundary from ecological aspects, but meanwhile, as a contact zone, shows already differences in the early Neolithic animal representations. In the southern part, there are mainly sheep and goat representations as reliefs, while in the northern area, both clay figurines and the usual reliefs on vessel walls appear to be cattle. The turn to cattle has a strong signal by a monumental, almost half-meter-high horned clay figurine standing on a podium that was found in a site near Alsónyék, which I studied a few years ago. It dates to 5,700 years BCE. As it is turned out from the computer tomography analysis, that means some 40,000 snapshots, I carefully chose the diagnostic ones. It consists of 3 distinct layers plus an external slip. The first one was extremely coarse. The external part has the horns first. According to the geochemical analysis, each layer was fired individually, so it must have been a longer procedure, but within a shorter time span, no more than 2 weeks. Plus, as petrographic as phytolite analysis says, the whole process took place in the summertime after harvesting. So it was a kind of harvest ritual, as we can. This is a brand new type in the Korosh culture in the Carpathian basin. It became soon clear that this installation, the size and the proportion, shed light on the closest and also on the broader circle of parallels, also showing the same layers according to a new study. So each and every investigated representation belonging to this type shows the very strange structure of individually burnt layers. A new monumental, minimalistic, and also past pro-toto representation has been discovered here. And regarding to this broader circle, these figurines perfectly fit according to their size and proportions of many very well-known examples for this monumental figural art in Southeast Europe, with a special significance amount in Northern Macedonia. The matching arrangement, size and proportions are remarkable, and also the fact that both female and the horned variants are images of something that is completely non-existing. They are all imaginary creatures, not existence in nature. Going back to my monumental horned cattle figurine, the relief of a female genital organ becomes apparent on its face because there was no other possibility to put a relief on other parts. However, generally, all horned images are interpreted as bulls, as we know, symbols of masculinity and male procreative power. However, cows also have horns. They are usually sawn off because of cautiousness with milking them, but there are some examples, I'm showing some cows who escaped from this process. In the light of this, the peculiar depiction of the front part that is on the face of the cattle figurine may well be a sign that of a cow and not of a bull. This is fitting the Southeast European parallels with female heads or upper bodies. About subsistence, we can state that the early milk product consummation that may have served their lives during famine periods is traced back by the food cultures and the neo-milk projects led by Richard Evershed in Bristol, and is making the figurine a symbolic cow brought into the household for domestic rituals. It was a kind of security for bad times, for times when there was no food. Dried cheese, fermented milk products maybe saved their lives. And it was to that extent important to them that they brought this, this figural representation from the outside, where cattle belongs to the inside, to the household, making it a ritual object and part of rituals, of course. This is just a small summary of the importance of the word of clayscape, starting with the word of clay, the landscape, and ending with the monumental cattle figurine. I just wanted to give a sign with this that the domestic animal in the center was coming in a main bottleneck that changed in order to coping with new Central European and more Atlantic climatic circumstances. Entangled. Now to wrap up, looking back into the Southeast European regions and focusing on the Carpathian basin, I suggested that a more nuanced approach to the Neolithic transition, early settlements and initial contacts with indigenous people for fluidity, variations in scale, duration and connectivity, and some interaction with mutual learning and adaptation between incoming farmers and indigenous population is to be assumed. All documented hunter-gatherer societies of the prehistoric part, or maybe we can also extend it for the present, are the products of unique and dynamic history. So it's a mistake if we say that hunter-gatherers are all the very same kinds of societies or groups of people. They often have often include external impacts as well as very diverse internal developments. A similar story can be reconstructed about the arrival of the first generations of farming groups. It was so not one event, but it was a long-lasting, and even importantly, it was a mosaic-like and uneven process. I also tried to say some words about the reaction of the slowdown and the bottlenecks with innovative solutions. They were forced to find out something to survive. And the formation of a really resilient and successful group of people was soon spreading to the vast regions. That was the LBK that actually determined Europe's prehistory for the coming 2 millennia, if we want to put it like that. We are just at the beginning of a long road to interpret archaeological, environmental, and bioarchaeological data. what I think it is key, and it's a pivotal fact, that what we aim is a kind of transdisciplinary research. Why is it important? Because if we consider all methods and questions of the complementary principles and fields of research, then we can put a higher level of research questions already born from the combination, from the combined interpretation of everything. So I think the future is about transdisciplinary research. I'm grateful to all my partners in research, as I'm grateful to you for listening. Thank you.